Welcome to Monarchist Minute. I'm your host, William Stout, and tonight we have a very full and interesting cast. We have Toby Costner and Austin Pomper from the United Monarchist Party of America, and we have Prussian Mad Lad from the Radical Monarchists. Unfortunately, tonight we do not have a very cheerful topic of conversation. As of the day of recording, it is September 13th, 2025, and earlier this week, Charlie Kirk was brutally murdered while attending a rally or some sort of speaking event at. Was it the University of Utah?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. But he was brutally murdered, and unfortunately, rather than talking about something more cheerful and exciting like the possibility of the restoration of monarchy in Nepal coming closer with the overthrow of the Maoist government, we wanted to have a very, very serious talk about political violence in the modern United States. Before we begin, how is everyone this evening?
Well, I'm doing better than I was on Wednesday. Gosh, it still feels surreal. This guy who just had so much influence. It's weird saying he's gone.
I mean, I know I wasn't personally a fan of Mr. Kirk, but I didn't have that hard of feelings against him, and seeing this happen is just so horrible. I mean, earlier today we had a vigil in the UMP, which I was happy to speak at, and as I said, even if you didn't like Charlie Kirk, you probably were inspired or brought into the movement by someone who themselves was influenced by Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, I was much the same. I didn't really know him too well. I didn't have really an opinion about him. I just knew that he was part of the overall space, and so kind of I didn't even know that he founded Turning Point USA until the day he passed. I was aware of them far more than I was aware of him. So yeah, he was just kind of floating around in the ecosystem like a bunch of other people were. But yeah, no, I had no animosity towards him like anybody else. He's just offering his views, and more than most, I mean, he's offering people to discuss and debate with him and try to convince him otherwise, which is more than a lot of people offer anyone else in his position.
Question, do you have anything to add?
Well, all I have to say is that I've prayed for Charlie Kirk, and I've also prayed for his wife and children, and I will continue to pray for them that God will watch over them, and that Charlie Kirk will rest in eternal bliss in the loving embrace of our Lord. And that's all I have to say about the assassination of Charlie Kirk.
I remember hearing a rumor somewhere, but I haven't seen an article that corroborates it, that his wife and kids were present at the university when the assassination happens, but I have not read anything that might confirm or deny that. If that is the case, though, they are in definite need of our prayers.
I heard that too, and I heard another rumor. I desperately hope it's not true because when I heard it, it just made my heart shatter. Supposedly, when his daughter heard the gunshots, she supposedly ran to him.
I heard that too. And honestly, if she did, I don't think she would have gotten too far. Because in a situation like that, somebody probably would have stopped her before she got to him, because he had like what, 6 or 7 guys around him. I mean, he needed that many to carry him over to the SUV to take him to the hospital. So I feel like somebody either would have known that that was his daughter and would have kind of swept her up before she got too close. So that way he could have had medical attention. But yeah, no, I mean, everybody, I mean, you just had a bunch of people just screaming and running in all different kinds of directions. It was like, it looked like chaos.
It was chaos. I remember seeing the video. In fact, I got to see some of the really close-up videos of the exact moment the bullet hit him, and that's a surreal experience.
Oh yeah, no, I was shown videos of that, and he finished answering a question that somebody just asked him, and a second later you hear the shot and you see him recoil back, and then you just see blood. And I couldn't believe it, because I've never seen a gunshot wound like that before. I couldn't believe it. That was incredible.
I've had the misfortune of seeing gore videos before, and it's tied with as much blood. It was pretty horrific.
Well, I mean, we have in the UMP, we have I think at least one medical person trained in the medical field, and I mean they basically said he was shot in one of the arteries, because that's basically showing what that video is showing is the heart pumping blood. Like that is the heart kind of like doing its job, but it's not staying in the body, it's just leaving, and so that's why there was so much so fast.
If there's any solace in it with the amount of blood he lost, he probably wasn't conscious to feel it very long, if we can take any solace from that.
That's the only thing that kind of makes me not as, you know I don't I hope I'm really hoping that you're right, and it's the only thing that's kind of making me feel any kind of like not deep depressed kind of a way about this whole situation, is the fact that I feel like he wouldn't have been conscious for most, if any, of it. I mean, it probably would have just knocked him back and out completely, and he wouldn't have really felt anything, because he would have lost so much blood. I mean, it's kind of like a heart attack, I guess, because like it's happening, and the next thing you know, it's over. You know.
Yeah,
Props
that
to
does
all
sound
the.
about right. Oh, sorry.
No, you're okay, Prussian. Props to all the emergency responders in that situation, though. To rush into a situation like that, not knowing if the sniper is still there and still looking to pop off another shot. Now, now that we know the shooter was caught and we have his identity and anything, does anyone have any comments we want to make on him?
I would like to make a comment. Um, so we know this guy is 22 years old. We don't know much about him, so there's only one thing we can really say. Um, one, pray for his soul that he may repent, but also pray an imprecatory psalm for him. Pray that the government finally learns to do its job and gives him what the government is meant to, the power of the sword. I know it's harsh
If I if I recall, Utah is one of the few states remaining that still uses Old Sparky.
and good, as they should. And again, it may sound harsh, but I feel like they should probably broadcast it, make it public. That way people can learn why we have the death penalty, is to scare those who do not have the faculties necessary to maintain morality on their own into at least behaving morally.
I'm of the opposite opinion, where I think in this situation, making something like that public would only turn him into a martyr.
Yeah,
I,
I agree. I think that if you deprive him of any kind of visual end, then that kind of sucks the air out of the situation on his part. Um, I definitely think he's going to go to the chair. Proverbial or anything else. He's definitely just going to go, and he's going to get the death penalty. I think. I mean, the governor was very explicit about that when he gave his address on the day, that he's like, I want to remind everybody that Utah still is one of the few states that has the death penalty. So I mean, that's the position of the state. The position of the state of Utah, it seems, at least as far as his words are concerned, is that they're gonna go the full mile, and they're probably gonna
They
have death penalty.
Say what you will about the Mormons, when it comes to this sort of situation, they take it very seriously.
I mean, who wouldn't in this kind of a situation when you're basically, you have a guest, you invited a guest to one of your universities, and in front of thousands of people, they're gunned down, and it's not like he was shot and like he was conscious and people were able to like put pressure on the wound and call the ambulance and wait for everything to happen. Like, he was shot, and odds are he died very shortly after. I mean, sure, they rushed him to the hospital and they called it there, and he bled out in the hospital, but I was at work while all of this was going on, and within an hour of hearing about it and finally arriving at my destination where I needed to drive to, which was only an hour, he was already dead. So likely from the moment he was shot to the moment he was taken to the car, driven to the hospital, and they were able to pronounce it. I mean, I don't think he survived very much past the bullet.
Agreed, but I want to say for a second, I want to give my kudos and condolences to the father of the shooter, because damn, that's got to be hard, turning your own son in. That really has to be heartbreaking.
Well, he did the right thing, so he should be commended for that.
Yeah, he really did, and it's gotta hurt even knowing more that he most likely knew that it meant that his son was going to get a death penalty.
I know, and my heart breaks for this poor man, and we need to pray for him too. Truly. But as we keep hearing of his motives, I think the case is pretty straightforward that he was likely socialist, anarchist, probably an ANCOM, black bloc kind of guy.
Yeah, it is no surprise. It the Sorry, actually, I'm sorry. I'm just really tired. I can't think of anything else to add on that uh particular topic.
Okay, Prussian.
Kind of reminds me of something we were talking about, me and Austin, some other guys over, I believe it was in the Great Hall a while back, talking about how modern anarchists don't really do anything. Well, I guess I wish we hadn't made that statement.
Uh, I'm just I'm just really concerned that now there's going to be some kind of far right counterattack, and this is only going to escalate into something worse. Because as hard as it is, what we need to do is do what Christ would have wanted us to do, and that's turn the other cheek. Because if we try to lash out in revenge, the only thing we're going to do is justify further escalation.
Um, to
You-
Oh, sorry. Mind if I go, or should
Yes,
someone
go
else
ahead.
go? Okay. I would say that to diminish the prospects of a far right clash, which as a right winger I would want to avoid, we would need two things. One, we would obviously need the rule of law. We would need the government to crack down on any instances or attempts of terrorism, be it from the far left, as it was in this case, or from the far right. And second, I think one uh, positive development that has emerged from the murder of Charlie Kirk, as horrific and tragic as it was, you would see this cancellation of people who were cheering and celebrating Charlie Kirk's death, which, frankly, is they're just throwing gasoline on the fire at this point. But interestingly enough, what has happened is that, like, in response to the cheering of Charlie Kirk's death, you have people who aren't resorting to violence, but rather who are reporting these people, calling them out in public, uh, and like reporting to HR, reporting to their employers, and all these people that were cheering Charlie Kirk's death got fired or suspended. They're all being held accountable for. They're all being held accountable by the internet for the horrific things that they said, which I think is, it- which I think is would help turn reduce the temperature at least to an extent, in the sense that it would hold people accountable. And it, basically, it's this interesting scenario where you see cancel culture being used uh, to some extent, de-escalating the temperature, like toning down the temperature, even if a bit, by holding people accountable.
Right, and I've seen also a lot of more moderate left-leaning people or moderate progressives really have to reconsider what just happened, and it's making them change the way they engage in things online. Like, I think it was Stephen King I saw, who basically, judging by at least what I saw from his tweets, running the Mo account, he's had a come to Jesus moment since Charlie Kirk died. It's like, my God, my statements about the Republicans really have been incredibly horrific in the past, and maybe I should reconsider some of the things I say.
There are some Democrats who have fallen into that kind of repentant attitude, but Stephen King kind of wasn't one of them. He made a statement that kind of digged at Charlie after the death, but he recanted and apologized. But I don't know how much I trusted after that.
I didn't
Oh
hear
yeah,
about that original statement. I just heard about his recant, and it seemed pretty genuine.
Well, I think we have to kind of ask ourselves, like, what was the ultimate trend that kind of led up to all this? I mean, we're seeing for the past, I don't know how many years now, like maybe 5, 10 years, of the political divide get more and more extreme, and people become more and more, unwilling to kind of recognize principles or like honesty or virtues in the other side. And so you'll have the right call the left socialists and communists, which to them isn't an insult, it's a badge of honor. They're not shy about that. But then you'll have left leaning commentators and people saying that the people on the right are all fascists and Nazis, and they're planning to overthrow democracy and all of our values and everything that we hold dear. So, like, for the right, it's always been more of a social contagion, but for the left, it always seemed like an existential threat. And so, basically, for the past 10 years, they were saying that all of these people are a threat to democracy and they're going to take away everything that you love. And, what would you do if you got a chance to stop the horrors of the Second World War? Well, would you? And so they're unconsciously or subconsciously implanting the connection in people's minds and the minds of their listeners to see these two sides, to see people on the right side of the spectrum as synonymous with the most horrific monsters of the first half of the 20th century. And so, of course, when someone has the means to act out that preventative measure to stop what they see as a greater horror, they're going to do that. But in the end, you've just murdered somebody in cold blood, at the influence of social voices that subliminally told you that these two things are the same, and they're not the same. Charlie Kirk was not the second coming of some horrific dictator born again from our past. And the idea that any of these people are the same as the criminals of the first half of the 20th century is not just irresponsible, but it's extremely dangerous. And we're seeing now it's costing people their lives. And there has to be a reckoning for that. I'm as nervous as you are about the reaction, mostly because I am nervous about the type of ideologies that underpin the political right. Not all of them are very tasteful, or very, they're very unpalatable, some of them. But this is an inevitable outgrowth of what we've seen in the past decade. I was not surprised. This is just more of what I could see being predicted by by the intellectuals that I would follow. This is exactly what I would have expected to happen.
Now, something I heard that was rather concerning from one of the articles I read was going through the killer's devices, they found him active on Discord, and he might have an accomplice or more than one accomplice. Because I think I read somewhere in an article that spoke about the drop site. Like he picked up the gun wasn't his, he picked it up somewhere.
I'm not surprised about that. I mean, if you think about it, you'd have to have somebody else, or a team of other people, because how suspicious would it look if you walked up to an event fully geared up with everything you would need, like on the day? That doesn't make any sense. It would have to be planted in advance, and you'd have to know where to go.
The only thing that makes me wonder is you would think that the accomplices would have also planned a better escape route for him to lay low in the event that he would get caught, because now he's a lack of a better term, what's the word I want to look for, loose end.
Yeah, either that, or he was fully willing, like he wasn't the brains behind all this. He was just a fully willing actor, and his part to play was the sacrifice. He would be both, the executioner and the person to be executed at the end.
If I may, I was watching some Nico Ortiz the night I got home after the assassination. He noted from his experience, in executive security, that it seems suspicious that that one guy had the older feller had claimed to be the assassin, and he wondered if maybe he was uh, covering for the real shooter as a so the shooter could get away.
The old dude?
Yeah,
I heard that old dude
That
was
is
just
something
at the
too.
wrong place at the wrong time. He said the wrong thing and it ended up getting him in trouble.
well, I mean, I heard that he had announced himself as a shooter.
Oh, I hadn't heard that.
I mean, right now details are still pretty loose, so right now it's pretty much all hearsay.
Question, you were gonna say something?
Oh, I just want to make a. I just want to make an additional note, something that is worth pointing out. That's there have been multiple people describe themselves as left-leaning and left who have openly, not only openly condemned Charlie's murder, but also condemned people on their own side for celebrating the murder. And I think this is something that's worth pointing out, and that those individuals should be commended, and credit should be given to them for doing that. And that's that was like that one small tidbit that I just wanted to add for the record.
Any specific names we should give shout outs to in this record?
Uh, unfortunately, uh, unfortunately, I don't have any names except for two: Congressman Al Green and the left-wing commentator Dean Withers. Those are the only two names that I could find at this time.
Well, thank you for that.
Yes.
Congressman Al Green and Mr. Dean Withers, you two are men of quality. God bless you. Now, I guess the next question and the final question of the evening is, where do we go from here?
Personally, I see this as the next inevitable step towards a potential, probably a potential crackdown. I wouldn't say systemic change just yet, but usually events like this are often used by regimes, by governments to crack down further on their political opponents. And I I saw this as another one of those moments where when this man was not a politician in that sense. He was a political activist and a commentator. Um, he engaged in debate and discussion. He did not create policy. And so, like I said before, he was somebody who offered people to attempt to change his mind. Whether or not they ever would have been successful is beside the point. The point ultimately is that he gave his political adversaries, I won't say opponents, but rivals, in a gentlemanly way, the ability that he gave them a platform to discuss with him in a very honest manner. And instead of taking that and actually engaging, they decided to silence him permanently. And that will not stand. This is a moment of almost like the dichotomy between the natural American style gentlemanly liberalism and free speech. Several of us have mentioned free speech already, and a biblical desire for revenge and for justice. And it's almost like an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth at this point. I think a lot of people in this country are just pitchfork angry, and they're just not willing to compromise very much further. That everybody, I feel like, is at the end of their rope. And Franklin said, "A republic, if you can keep it." I don't know how much longer we can keep it.
I don't think we've been keeping it for a while, but now the rod is becoming to the point where we can no longer ignore it. To point out a pop culture reference, we're currently at the stage of the dog sitting in the chair at the room on fire saying this is fine, and he just realized it's not fine.
Yeah, I think that the most feasible path to stability would be much similar to the Roman path, where you have a series of strongman rulers coming in. These Caesarian rulers unifying this society and through this Bonapartist style popularity and bringing order to the state. And over time, this series of Caesarian rulers would uh, culminate in the evolution of like a principate, like a mixed government, which hopefully would evolve towards monarchy and not devolve into, say, a military dictatorship or a bourgeois dictatorship or anything like that.
It's
I am
oh,
generally. Oh, you go ahead, Toby.
it's funny you should mention that, Matt lad, because I was just thinking about it. You know, we often like to draw parallels between us and the Roman Empire. I know a parallel I've often drawn is that JFK and RFK were the crack eye brothers of America. So I was wondering, where does that put Charlie Kirk? Is he our Caesar? And who then would be our Augustus?
I wouldn't
Just
say
think
he's our Caesar, but he might be akin to a Marius or.
Yeah, we have to keep in mind that Sola, if I remember correctly, Sola was the very first man ruler who forcefully came in and brought order to the Roman Republic, but then he stepped down and restored the Republic. But he did set the precedent for strongman rulers to come in, and then you had Julius Caesar, and then you had Augustus Caesar. So I think we're heading towards the Sulla stage of our republic.
Yeah,
Now,
but even then, that was still a very vindictive period. I mean, I'm gonna jump out on a limb here and be kind of the contrarian in the chat, because I'm going to say that while there is the inevitable desire to romanticize these events or draw direct parallels or even similar parallels, not with photographic accuracy, but like a rhyming sort of way. I am so concerned about any sort of strongman in this kind of a sense because it will not be a Bonaparte and it will not be a Caesar, because you have to bear in mind that the politics of that time and the politics now are completely different. Our last experience with strongman rulers of any kind in Western civilization have not been kind of the enlightened despotism that Napoleon attempted to replicate, even though he did it in the style of a military strongman. And it's not going to be this conciliatory wave that Caesar attempted after he defeated Pompey the Great. It's going to be one in which there are purges, one in which there are those who are inside and those who are outside. And in that way, it definitely will be, I agree, it'll be more like Sulla. But, you know, the idea that there will be an inevitable transition from a Sulla or Marius to a Caesar and an Augustus, that is not an inevitable transition. Caesar and
Well,
Augustus were not foretold. They came and they rose through circumstance, but there was no reason why they should have risen at all. In fact, their families were the ones that were some of the ones who were disgraced and who were, you know, on the outside during the previous dictatorships.
I
oh yeah,
have to say, I'll give you a second here, Prussian, but I gotta add
sure.
in on Austin's. As a Caesarist myself, I actually share much of the same concerns because my biggest concern, and this is with the Caesarist model, and this is why I'm very, very much a reformist, not a revolutionary in the subject, is because once you create that precedent for political violence or that precedent for strong men using military force to dictate and seize control, you can never get rid of that precedent. That precedent polluted Rome, plagued Rome, all the way up until Mehmet the Conqueror tore down the Theodosian walls. And even then, it plagued it afterwards in its successors. This
Oh, sorry.
So that is what concerns me, even as a Caesarist or a Caesarian, however we want to call it, is this idea of monarchogenesis from turning into a republic to a monarchy through gradual, strong leadership influencing the government toward a more hereditary style, is that we have to do this carefully and properly so not to create a precedent for violence. We have to do it within the framework of the institutions, I guess is what I'm trying to say. We have to we can't have a military dictatorship if we almost I hate to use the word dictatorship in this context, but we almost have to use a legalistic dictatorship. One where everything is confined in the confines of the law. Kind of like FDR. I want to use FDR as a good example. He broke the precedent of 2 terms per presidency, but he did it legally, and everything he did was within the confines of what was constitutionally bound by the president.
Yeah, I actually like that approach, and I think that's that legalistic reformist approach would be our best course of action. And yes, I do agree with Whitefire's concerns as a Caesarist myself that the risk of sliding into a dictatorship and veering away from the path to monarchy is a very tangible risk in a republic like that of America. So, I mean, like when you like move outside like the confines of the rule of law, because from what I've noticed, as opposed to say the United Kingdom, which has this rich history of like tradition and precedent, America is more like politically wise. America is like more legalistic in the sense that we focus more on like the rule of law and the separation of powers. that's like one characteristic of of American governance, and I think we should lean in towards that characteristic and use that as the path to monarchy.
See, I am not a Caesarian. I am a royalist of the old order, and my concern is that monarchists, royalists, Caesarians, whatever you want to call ourselves, we're not in control of the narrative. We're not directing the narrative, and so the political factions that we would most align with are currently not being guided by our invisible hand. And so while we might collectively recognize the risks, but also the potential rewards, um, they're not going to listen to us. They're going to do kind of what the old Thucydides trap is: the strong do what they will, and the weak suffer all that they must. And that's my main fear. My other main fear about going down the Caesarian path, and from what I'm hearing, a lot of you seem to be influenced, maybe I could be wrong, by a gentleman by the name of Curtis Yarvin, who I really don't have much sympathy for or like of, because I hear his flavor of monarchy when I listen to him. It's more of a benevolent dictatorship, which even I
Oh,
abhor. Um, I I think that Caesarians and people like Curtis Yarvin almost engage, like you were saying, monarchical genesis. The idea that history can be kind of put in a tube, and in a laboratory setting, if in politically controlled settings, will produce what we desire. I don't feel like we need to let history be actively recreated again. History has already happened. We can recreate the the systems that are preferable without having to go through the last 2,000 years, either on a one-for-one scale, or even if we speed run it. We don't need to go through the last 2,000 years of history. We don't need to start at Augustus and Julius. We don't even need to start at Charlemagne. A lot of political development has occurred in the last 1,000 years of history. And I think that if we are just to kind of put that to the wayside, kind of say, oh, well, that already happened. But we're still looking at the example of Rome. We're still like kind of creating parallels. But why do we have to start our parallels in Rome? Why do we have to take our political inspiration purely from Roman civilization? Honestly, it seems like a pretty arbitrary distinction to me. We could really recreate any of the political events that we desire. And frankly, I'm more inclined to create the political situations around. Uh, Again, I'm a medievalist. I'm very unashamed in my medievalism, but I'm a royalist to that degree. Anywhere from
uh,
the high Middle Ages to the Renaissance and the early modern period. I think that sort of system is just fine. We don't need to go back to the ancient days. America might wear the dress of Rome, but they are an 18th century country in pretty much everything else.
I gotta say, in regards to that, is and I'm pretty sure Prussian would back me up with this. Is I have no love for Curtis Yarvin in any way. In fact, Prussian and I had that wonderful conversation just earlier today in the Rad Monarchist server when the issue of neo-reactionaries were brought up, didn't we, Prussian?
oh yeah, we are no fans of the neo reaction by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, we Radmons have written some criticisms towards the neo reaction. I've written an article myself. I'm planning to write one later, and one of our members have written like a very extensive article, kind of like a treatise, that lists out how Austro-libertarian monarchism is superior to the neo reaction, and like in politically, economically, culturally, etc. I mean this, but yeah, like you said, we're not friends of the neo reactionaries.
I took a couple steps close to the neo-reactionary path once. I am lucky that I had a good mentor to quickly correct me. Thank you, Austin.
You are most welcome. I'm glad to hear that both of you are not fans of Curtis Yarvin. But
His
I do-
idea of monarchy is the most liberal reductionist nonsense I've ever heard. It is literally the idea of monarchy from someone who only knows post-Enlightenment thought, which is hilarious that they call themselves neo-reactionary.
well,
Because
calling
his
it neo.
his entire idea of monarchy is rule of one. It's literally the same logic of all the people who say a monarchy is basically a dictatorship. The only difference is he's saying, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think calling it like a liberal reductionist perversion of monarchy, that's very spot on. Uh, and as for Whitefire's criticism of drawing analogy from Rome, I just want to point out that it's not about arbitrarily taking a political system in the past and using it as like a, a like a cookie cutter template for the monarchy that we're trying to build. It's not like that. It's not like we're trying to arbitrarily impose a past moment in history upon contemporary society. It's more of learning lessons from the past, lessons that are relevant given the current time and circumstance. And given how Rome and America both evolved as empires. Like they both started out as colonies. Like Rome was originally like a Greek colony, and definitely the case for the other cities in Italy. America was a colony. They both became great empires. They both rejected monarchy, but then slid back into monarchy. And I think there's some lessons we can learn from the Romans, while we ourselves carve our own unique path in history.
Well, yeah, and I'm not saying that you're going to, revive the Roman system of government. That wasn't what I was saying. What I was saying is that you don't need to let the events play out as they would usually. This is
I
what
see.
this is what I mean about, kind of our invisible influence, our hand guiding events, because you're like I said, you're not guaranteed to get a Caesar or an Augustus. And even then, I mean, the imperial position was an amalgamation of multiple different and completely separate republican offices that were cobbled together by Augustus and were approved by the Senate. So even the position of imperator is not guaranteed in our instance, because the very nature of the American presidency and congressional system is a direct copy from the British parliamentary system in the 18th century. The House and the Senate are the Lords and the Commons. They both have speakers. The Sergeant at Arms is the administrative officer in both the Congress and the Parliament. The president is simply an elective king. He serves for two 4-year terms. But like I said, in 1787, when they were debating this stuff, he could have had a life term. Washington voted for that. Madison voted for that. Many of the most famous founding fathers voted for a life term for the presidency. They eventually settled on 4-year terms, but with no term limits. And they just assumed that every president would be continuously reelected if they were capable enough. Washington just didn't want to do it for his whole life, and so he decided to do 2 terms, and that was it. That wasn't meant to be a precedent. It turned out to be, but that wasn't intended. But our system, though we share some connection with Rome, I feel like the Roman connection can be overstated, and I feel like our systems are far more European than Roman. We would do better if we harken back to the medieval days and the early modern period than if we did all the way back to the ancient days of Rome. That's my view.
Okay, I think I see where you're coming from. Fair enough.
Well, we're going on 10 p.m. Eastern. Is there anything else we want to add, or do we want to wrap it up and get into closing prayer?
Let's go ahead and wrap it up.
Yeah.
All right. please bow your heads and join me in prayer. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us of our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Thank you all for joining us this evening on Monarchist Minute. We hope to see you next time, same place. If you're listening to this on YouTube, hit like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you can get the notifications from our channel. If you're listening to this on Spotify or another streaming service, hit whatever the button is. I guess you a notification there. Follow us on social media. Check out our website. If you want to get involved, join us on Discord, shoot us an email, or send us a direct message. We'll get back to you as promptly as we can. Until next time, may God bless you, and because we really need it, may God bless the United States of America. Thank you, and good night, and please stay safe out there.